Welcome to tonight's class. That was the bell. You probably didn't hear it because you're talking, and that's a good thing because we're happy to see each other. But we're gonna go ahead and bring it in. I see that we're practicing the dispersion of the gospel method in our seating arrangement. If you're so inclined, come closer if you want. There is not a splash zone, so you don't have to worry about that. I see Manny has finally had enough of sitting next to me, so you're all good. But it's going to be a great class tonight. We're in Acts chapter 25. I told you on Sunday, if you were with us, you got to read ahead because we're going to go through 2 whole chapters tonight. So I got to talk quick to give you guys time to read this. And then there's a lot, man, there's so much that we can unpack in this section, especially with the challenges for me. I think these 2 chapters probably left me thinking more about how I approached my discussions of the gospel than probably any other section in this entire book. That may just be me, but there's a lot I'd like to talk about as far as what challenges us and how can we overcome those challenges. But it's a really interesting chapter. And then before I get into that part, there's a little disclaimer here. I won't get into the details of it, but I did not bring my flash drive, and so we're going to recycle the PowerPoint up here. So I asked them to put chapters 25 and 26 on this slide, and then the rest of them are going to be wrong. So don't panic. It's 25 and 26. That's it. That's all we're in on that part of it. But we're going to be good with that. So I'm also going to give a plug here since I have just a little bit of a soapbox here. We're getting close to the end of this trimester, this class. So you've got tonight, and then you've got Monday and Wednesday, and then Joe's going to be leading us in those discussions. And I'm looking forward to them just as much as I think you guys are as well. But it means that we're coming to the end of the class, and so we're going to have a nice little special series as we typically do here at Livingston. But that also brings us, Lord willing, to the beginning of the next trimester of classes. And so what I'm going to encourage you is if you haven't taught a class before, please do. They are truly one of the best opportunities for you to grow as a Christian. I know Charlie and Joe and I can certainly say that, you know, who learns the most in a class? Is it the audience? No, we know that's not true. It's the teacher, right? You learn more by standing up here and going through those studies than you ever would sitting in a classroom, even offering great responses. So I'm going to encourage you to take on that challenge. And that may be new to you, that may be scary to you. There's lots of different places that you can do it with the younger classes. You could be like the second or the third person even in an adult class. But just talk. You come see me. I know you can talk to Joe. There's lots of different people, though, if you're interested in that, to try to get your feet wet with that. It's really a good opportunity for growth as a Christian. All right, now having said that, let's get into our class tonight. So Charlie, you're going to start us off with a prayer, and then when we come back, I'm going to have just a couple more remarks about what we're about to read, and then we'll get into our reading time with that. All right, Charlie.
Father, we come before you thankful for this study of Acts that we have and this opportunity we have to hear about Paul and his defense of you and his defense of his faith. We ask you to strengthen our faith in this moment and help us to learn from him and learn from the points that he makes and the history that we are able to see through these chapters. Please be with Rusty and help him to teach your word well and to bring it to life in this hour. We ask all this in your son's name. Amen.
All right, Charlie, thank you very much for that. I really like these 2 chapters, chapters 25 and 26. There are just so many themes that we could pull from this and that we could focus on any one of them and spend the entire time talking, but we're doing kind of a quick overview of this. Again, we're not diving too deep into the history and those parts of it, but we're gonna meet 3 new characters, 3 new people, excuse me, not characters. We're gonna talk about Festus. We're gonna talk about King Agrippa. You may have heard that name before. It is a new king that we're gonna talk about, and then Bernice, his sister, on that. So that'll be 3 new people that we're going to see in these chapters. To kind of set the stage, and remember, Paul had been he had been the recipient of a plot to kill him, and so the Jews were trying to get him out in the open, away from the Romans' custody, so that they could kill him and just be done with that situation. That was thwarted by it's thwarted by Claudius Lysias, who was over the Jerusalem at the time, and so he sends Paul to Caesarea Maritima, that's on the coast, And that city is important because it is the Roman capital of Judea. So he is now going before the governor of that area, which was Felix. Felix was with him for a time. He listened to him. He heard it, but he didn't respond the way he should. And we know that he lasted with Felix for 2 years. It's a long time, right? But that's an audience that Paul had with that particular governor. Now, Felix was not the most honorable man, and so he left him in prison, even though he had no charges against him. He knew Paul was innocent, but he was hoping for maybe a kickback, and so he kept him in custody. And eventually, as his successor was coming in, Festus, he left Paul in prison so that he could find favor with Jews. Okay, and that kind of makes sense, right? Because his wife was Jewish. Drusilla was her name. And so what better way to get in good with your wife's family or wife's company than by doing something that they want before you leave power? And that's just kind of the guy he was. So hopefully the gospel actually worked on him, but we really don't know much beyond that. Now his successor is Festus. Festus is who we're going to learn about. And there is a direct contrast to who Festus was versus who Felix was. Whereas Felix was a guy that kind of resorted to violence to get his way. He was a little corrupt. He didn't always have the greatest reputation. Festus, on the other hand, was known for things like pursuing bandits and rebels and dealing with the violence very, very quickly and with firmly, so as to squash those types of things. So this is a guy that recognizes uprising and revolts before they're happening and does something about it. So he was considered to be a more honest type governor, especially he was concerned with justice. And you'll see that in some of the things he says tonight when our reading about how the innocence of Paul with no charges to bring against him. What is he supposed to do with that? And so we'll read that here in just a second. But we know he's still a politician, right? At the end of the day, he's still a Roman politician, and so he has to follow the laws of the Roman Empire. And so when Paul makes a request to go before Caesar, he's got to honor that. But it puts him in a dilemma. I mean, we'll read this tonight because he says this to King Agrippa. He's like, I don't know what I'm supposed to write about this guy and send him to Rome. I'm gonna look foolish, right? Because I'm supposed to be holding the law here. So that sets us up for Paul's defense tonight. So he's going to be speaking before Festus and King Agrippa. And King Agrippa, just as a reminder, is the son of, this is Herod Agrippa II that we're going to be reading about tonight. He is the son of Herod Agrippa I, which you remember from Acts chapter 12. Same city, Caesarea. That particular king was eaten by worms because he did not humble himself. He exalted himself on that, and so he was given the consequence of death by worms. Very gross. Also, the great-grandson, this King Herod Agrippa II is the great-grandson of Herod the Great, so we know him from early in the Gospels on that. So that just kind of sets the stage. Bernice is his sister, just so we're aware of who that is. You're going to find that they're traveling together kind of as a royal duo. They're not a couple, right? There's nothing incestuous about this. We just know that she was accompanying him in his royal promenade, as royalty often surrounds himself with other royalty. That's just what you do. So so we have that little bit of an insight in there. All right, so I've set it up. Paul's going to give a defense. He's going to talk about his conversion, and then we're going to see the results of that. Now, remember, you're looking in this for how does Jesus fulfill his promises that he's made to us, to his church, and specifically to Paul, to be with him until the ends of the ages. And so we're going to see how that plan plays out with what he's said to him. So you got to find somebody to talk to read with. We're going to read tonight in two chapters, and so I'm going to stop talking because we need more time to read, and then we're going to come back and visit. So go ahead and group up. You're going to read out loud chapters 25 and 26. You're going to discuss anything that you notice. When we're answering the questions, what do you notice? What do you wonder about? What challenges you? And then what is the main point of the reading tonight? What is the main theme that we should be gleaning from this? All right, I'm going to stop and turn it over to you. You know how to do this at this point. So go ahead and read chapters 25 and 26. All right, you guys ready? Let's bring it back in. That was a lengthy reading. I told you, right? This is such a neat way to run a class too, by the way, to read this out loud. And I know I've praised that approach here earlier, but it is kind of fun too. My wife was with me in class on Sunday night, and this is her first time to be in the class, and she says, "How can you do this? We're reading it, and I can hear an echo of the people behind us that are like half a second off." And so it's fun listening to all of you because it's like that. It's like this wave of reading, and I'm hearing all the same words. And so hopefully it wasn't too distracting to you as we went through this quarter like that. But man, there's just something so powerful about reading the word out loud, but with somebody too on that. So I still encourage you to keep doing that. But man, this is so interesting, right? How this whole scenario plays out with Paul going from Felix to Festus, and then before King Agrippa, and then finally those concluding remarks there at the end. I didn't give you a lot of time to discuss, and so I just want to see what you guys can come up with as far as what stood out to you when you read this. And you can't go silent on me tonight because there are so many phrases or moments or ironies in this section that I know you've got some answers for me. So raise your hand. We're going to run the mic over to you so we can hear you, and then let's see what you came up with. What shines out to you in this section? Oh, I just gave you guys the opportunity. I just told you there's a lot to talk about. All right, we got way over here.
I think it's quite funny from Sunday night when we learned that a pact of Jews had made or a group of Jews had made a pact to not eat or drink until Paul was killed. And I think it's funny. And it starts in chapter 24. It says, after 5 days, so that's 5 days that were given. And then started 25, now 3 days. And then later in 25, they're asking if they can go down to Jerusalem. And then it puts in there that there's men waiting to kill him. So it's at least 7 weeks that these guys have not eaten or drank. So I don't think it's going to end well for them. You know, they're probably going to die, honestly. So yeah. I think that's pretty humorous.
Yeah, it's a great connection on the vow that they took before he was, we got Charlie down here, we got Bob over here on that part. Bob, I think you're going to be up first. So.
Well, I just love the fact that Paul's audience constantly changed, but his message never did. Same message, no matter if he was before the king or before a Gentile servant, the message was always the same. It was Jesus.
Yeah. I'm glad you pointed that out too, because that's a point I wanted to make as well. He had the opportunity to talk about him and how he was being wronged and just go on and on about that and his legal rights. But what did he do? He kept turning the conversation, like Bob said, back to Jesus. And what does Jesus do for us? And that's a pretty amazing thing. I think that's one of those things that challenges me that we can talk about a little bit later. Charlie?
I think there's it reminds you a lot of Jesus, where when you think about Jesus and his ministry, other people thought that they were controlling Jesus. When the Romans took him in, when the Sanhedrin took him in, they thought they were in control, but actually they were doing exactly what Jesus wanted them to do. And you look at Paul and Agrippa, as Agrippa says in the end of chapter 26, I would have let him go. What he didn't know was Paul's mission was to go to Rome. Yeah. So he was doing exactly what Paul wanted to do by Festus telling him he had to go to Rome.
Yeah. And it's very easy to look at that and go, man, Paul, you missed out on an opportunity right there, or why does he have to keep going through these things? But remember, what did Jesus say to him at the end of chapter 23? He's right. He said, you've talked about these things about me in Jerusalem, and now you're going to do the same thing in Rome. I mean, God's sovereignty is going to play out here. It's really neat to see how it gets played out through a legal process, right? And you might look at Paul and think that he is somehow the victim of this, and he is to a sense, but really he is an avenue to spread the gospel through what we would consider an unfortunate situation. But does God see it as an unfortunate situation? No, it's a means to execute his plan for the benefit of all mankind. It's really cool on that. I'll point out something too, kind of to jump on what Stephen had said about the Jews there at the beginning of the chapter. Do you notice that it's been 2 years, right, that Paul's been with Festus, and then Felix comes on the scene, and what do the Jews do? Let's pull out that old bag of tricks and come up with the exact same plan of trying to kill him by getting him pulled out into the open. And of course, Felix is like, nah, we're not going to do that. He's going to stay here. Isn't that kind of very human of people, right? When the new leader comes on board, let's see if we can get away with the thing that we couldn't get away with the last guy. Again, it humanizes us because we kind of laugh at that, but we've all been in that situation in some degree, right? Some of us have gone to mom and she says no, and what do? Let's go over to dad and see if dad will let us do it, right? It's kind of like that situation, but how ironic. All right, what else? What else shines out to you? Any other comments? Any nuances of this, the irony that you see here? How about this? How about anything new that you've never seen before that you noticed? Anything that was jumped out at you? Yeah, Robbie?
I don't remember, at least from the last time I read this, that Paul details in his testimony to King Agrippa, like all the evil he had done to Christians. Like I don't remember him stating all of that. I know other times in Acts he's done that, but he's like on record. Almost kind of like, hey, I kind of did break the law back when I was working with all these guys that are now trying to kill me. That's when I actually did kind of do, some of these things that are probably illegal. I would assume, I'm not a huge student of Roman law, but I would assume, some of that stuff laid out there is illegal. But anyway, that jumped out to me this time.
All right, let me make 2 comments on that too. Isn't it so powerful that Paul is willing to bring up his past in a moment where he's trying to give defense of himself to either get out of prison or not be killed? What do we as people often do when we make a mistake? Do we want to put it out there for everybody to see, or do we try to hide it? Like let's keep that tucked away so nobody knows that I've been that person before, right? And yet Paul makes that as part of his defense. But what is the purpose of saying that? It's because of coming across Jesus. So I need a better word for saying that. But he was converted, right? He was converted, and his life has now changed. And it's okay for us to have those vulnerable moments when we talk about people. I don't advise you to go out and to open up the entire chest of secrets or all the skeletons in the closet, but it's okay to talk about who we were as a person before we changed or were changed by the grace of God. And then I'll hold on to my second point. Go ahead. Yeah.
No, just, very specifically, Paul says, this was not done under a rock. I know these guys.
Yeah.
And the high priest, and they all know me. And in Paul's perspective, it was legal. He got approval from the chief priest. He's prosecuting heretics in their religion. They're not Romans. And so in that sense, it's not against Roman law. Now, in the sense that, can you imagine Paul sitting up at night and thinking about what he actually did and all the way he made it harder for people who are Christians when he realized he's totally wrong and Jesus is Lord? I can only imagine how many sleepless nights that took him. But he says, and he repeats it before when he talks to the Jews in Jerusalem, and he repeats it here. He was in good conscience at the time, which in some ways, some ways scares me even more. I read it was talking about an actor's portrayal of Nazis in a film. And the actor was talking about how that the best way to portray it was you acted like you were good, because everybody who's in that moment tends to think they're good. This was not somebody who was failing in that we do is like, oh man, I made a mistake and I made a sin. And I knew it was a sin at the time, and I just made all these mistakes, and then I found Jesus and stopped making mistakes through the grace of God, and Jesus is helping me. This is a man that he believed what he was doing was God's will. He's doing it with all of his might at the time. There was no remorse until Jesus struck him blind on that road to Damascus, and he had 3 days to think and be blind and think about what he did. And then it hits him like a bolt of lightning, and he comes back. So in that sense, it's very different from, I would think that would be more compared to somebody who's in a faith like a Mormon faith or something like that, who's prosecuting and being very violent, and then realizes, whoa, that's the exact opposite of what God wanted me to do. And so I think that's very important for us to remember, because his conscience, and he repeats it here in verse 16, I've always strived to have a conscience without offense toward God and man. That wasn't his problem. His problem, he was just wrong. And so then the self-reflection to me is, what are things that I really believe, am I doing enough studying? Am I doing enough understanding? Like, what if I am completely wrong about something? And then the solution is the same. We need to go talk to Jesus.
Yeah, that's a really good point on that. All right, what else? Yeah, back to Stephen over here.
I find it interesting, the parallel in between Felix the governor and Agrippa. In chapter 24, when Felix had called Paul to speak to him about the way, about Jesus, at that time, Paul took that opportunity to talk to him about makes note of self-control, righteousness, and coming judgment. At that time, he didn't know what what was going through Felix's mind. Talking about he had hoped money would be given to him by Paul, but he still took that opportunity to talk to Felix about Jesus. But then when he's before Agrippa in chapter 26, he takes advantage of that opportunity again, and even though he's being held prisoner and being tried for unfounded charges against him, he takes that opportunity to talk to powerful leaders about Jesus. So I think the parallel between Felix, how he responded to that, and then Agrippa, I think that was an interesting note that I made.
Okay. All right, you guys are making excellent comments tonight. I'm going to move on just to the next question here. Anything that you're left wondering about, anything that makes you want to study a little further or wonder that we'll never know the answer to, but you'd be curious? Well, I'll give you one. Like, what happened to Agrippa? What happened to Felix? Did they ever turn around and actually come to it? It's hard to tell the tone of their responses, whether there's sarcasm or, like with Festus, was he truly concerned that Paul was mad because of the studying, or did he just make a comment like, you're wackadoo, buddy, that kind of thing. And same thing with King Agrippa. This is one that was new for me in studying this. Like I have the ESV version, and so I'm reading it, and I've never noticed this before, but when King Agrippa makes this comment about almost persuading me, it's asked as a question in the ESV, but if you have, I think it's the New King James, it's a statement. And so there's kind of an interpretation of how it's presented. And so again, the tone is he being sarcastic to Paul? Is he truly saying, you can persuade me if we just keep talking? Those things are hard to interpret until you're in that situation. I'm very hopeful that it was, I'm on the cusp and I'm almost there, but I'm not there yet. And then eventually making that choice after the book finishes its purpose on that. All right. Anything for you though? Anything that you're left wondering about? No? All right. Well, that's okay. Let's get to the next question. This is one we probably should have spent the most time on, but from this reading, I'm hoping that as you read through it, you noticed a few things that go, oh, that kind of challenges me. I wonder if I would do this in this situation, or am I truly am I truly being faithful? Or like, what if I'm wrong, right? What if I'm really wrong? I like that comment that was made just a second ago. But what challenges you from this section? Yeah. Charlie?
I think it's always challenging how, when you think about Paul's situation, his primary concern would be, I need to save my skin, I'm supposed to go to Rome. But yet he turns his defense into a gospel message to try and convince Agrippa that he should, because, we only have a little bit of what he said. But apparently what he said was powerful enough that Agrippa would come away with the statement that, you almost persuade me, which I just find that to be, he must have really thought about, how am I going to approach this in a way that not only benefits me, but it also benefits Agrippa and Festus and Bernice.
Yeah, Bob?
I'm reminded, Rusty, that Satan's tactics have not changed through the millennia. If you can't kill the message, then kill the messenger. Still that way today. The message cannot be killed, so discourage the messenger. Throw temptations in their way. Let them get sick. Let someone that they thought was strong move away from the Lord. Discourage the messenger, because Satan lost the battle already to destroy the message. The Word became flesh and dwelled among us.
Well, Bob, I guess let me add to that a little bit. One of the thoughts that came up in my mind as I was thinking about this was, would I be brave enough before political figures or powerful figures to speak the truth, right? Because in that situation, it's very easy. It'd be easy for you to crumble or to back off what you're trying to say, like what Charlie said, to save your own skin or to avoid public ridicule or punishment or whatever it is. But would we be brave like Paul in this moment to recognize that Satan is already defeated and it doesn't matter what happens to me in this life, because our job is to spread the gospel, to make it like where Paul says that I wish everybody was like me minus the chains. In other words, in a relationship with Jesus and confident in that enough to take on whatever the situation is, right? That one for me, that stood out for me as a challenge. And I think it rides right on the overlying statement of what you're making right there. Yeah.
I think kind of two things that are challenging to me, I guess, is like we see Paul progress through this legal system, as you said earlier, and how would we react and talk about this and similar defenses to the gospel if we were put in these same situations? I mean, obviously, not all of us are put in these situations very often, but to kind of a minimal extent, we can be put in these situations where we have to defend our own faith. And kind of in turn with that, how would we react to people without an easy reaction to us? I mean, we see Agrippa has a little bit of a calmer reaction than Festus does, I think. But kind of in those more heated areas where people would react and address us in those ways, like, how do we react to that? And how would we stay consistent through that? And would we let pressure get to us? I think that's a big challenge. And Paul does an incredible job of staying consistent and not giving in to pressure of questioning and of aggression through people. So I think that's really interesting and something we can take away.
Great. Was Paul right to appeal to Caesar? That's a trick question, just so you know, right? Did that demonstrate a lack of faith or was that a bold proclamation of faith? That was one I kind of juggled in my mind a little bit. Because what did Jesus say to him? Right? I said it earlier, right? 23:11, right? You've proclaimed these things about me in Jerusalem, and now you're going to go to Rome and do it. So did Paul force the issue, or did Paul just demonstrate the faith by appealing to Caesar on that one? Any thoughts on that? Yeah.
I think he was setting a precedent that others might need to follow. And if he could get Caesar to back off, then he might back off of others as well.
Okay. Yeah, Phil.
We do know when Jesus told the apostles, he said, you're going to be brought in front of authorities, and you don't need to worry about what you need to say. The Holy Spirit's going to be with you. And so I take it that the Holy Spirit here inspired him to do that. He did have the prophecies already, like when he went by with the brethren from Ephesus, and they talked about. So I assume, but again, that's an assumption. It doesn't say here, but he's not rebuked by it, and it is what the Lord said to lay it out. And you look at the alternative. So eventually, somebody decides to send him back to Jerusalem. They waylay him and kill him. Then he doesn't get to Rome. Maybe that was. But yeah, I take it here that that's what the Holy Spirit inspired him to do. And you see, too, he's very careful when he pulls the Roman card out. he does it at the right time, And again, I think about like all the way back at Philippi. He could have pulled that out immediately. Don't you dare put me in there, beat me, and spend a night in there in the jail. But he doesn't. And as a result, the Philippian jailer and his family are saved, and they witness in front of them. So. He definitely can pull the Roman card out, but I got to believe he's being inspired by the Holy Spirit.
Yeah. All right. In the last couple minutes that we have here, since that first bell rang, anything else that challenges you? All right. Well, let's see. Let me see I had a couple of notes here. I mentioned a couple already, but here's a question that we might want to ask ourselves too as a challenging question. Do I, and this is maybe you asking this, do I really believe the gospel is for everyone? That's a hard question, really, to ask or to answer. But you see Paul making that comment about when he's talking to Agrippa and Festa again about I wish that not only you but everyone was like me, right? Minus the change. Do we have that true love for mankind to the person that's berating us or imprisoning us or doing whatever to us? Do we still have that desire for them to be saved, for them to know who their Savior is? That's a good challenging question to ask ourselves often, and not just answer it one time and go, I'm good, right? But to keep asking ourselves, am I following into the trap of prejudices or giving into the trickery of the devil to think that person is not good enough? Because we're all in the same boat, right? Sin has enslaved all of us. We're imprisoned by it. But let's not ever think that we're good to get out, but somebody else is not, so I'm not going to put the effort into that. Okay. Any concluding thoughts? Anything else that you want to share with the group? Okay, you guys have done really well, like really, really well. Now, I'm going to rebuke some of you. You've been silent. You haven't answered. I'm going to look around the room and some eyes here real quick. You guys have great answers, like really great answers that are up here. We got to get them out here because it really does benefit everybody in the group. It is akin to being the teacher up here when you speak out in this class. And I know it's scary, right? The microphone and the large room, and it's being put out on the internet and things like that. But truly, if you will, like Paul, put yourself out there in a position that is scary and voice what you're thinking, I mean, imagine the growth and the benefit that other people can have from it. So don't ever be afraid to say what you have going on up here in these classes, because I'm telling you right now, you have a much better answer than what you think you do. So get it out, right? Get it out and share. All right, Joe's going to lead us in chapter 27. Is it all of chapter 27 on Sunday? Yeah. So just make sure that you're reading. In fact, just read the rest of the book. There's 2 more chapters, and be ready for that on Wednesday or Sunday and Wednesday. Then, okay. Thank you guys so much.
Good evening, everyone. Faithful love. Do. Faithful love. Listen to our hearts.